Hello everyone and welcome back to Witchinary. If you have yet to subscribe to this channel, then please do so because we are getting crafty, and today I wanted to share with you my creations using the Simon Says Stamp Snow Much January 2019 card kit. This card kit is super pretty for the winter. It's winter themed obviously, and I'm going to link to it below so you guys can definitely check out all of the goodies that it brings. My favorite things from this kit is definitely just the Echo Park Celebrate Winter 6x6 paper pack. I tried to take it apart on camera and it gets stuck, so I just kind of end up flipping through it. And from my stash, just to kind of add a little bit more to the color scheme that I was seeing, I added some lipstick red cardstock from Simon Says Stamp, as well as some night cardstock from Paper Source. I'm also going to add an extra tag that we got during last year's kit, and that's how we got started. To start all of my cards, I am going to take all of my papers and I'm going to make A2 size panels from each of them, and I'm going to save the strips that are extras from each of these panels just because that way I can kind of get an idea of how I'm going to make these cards. There's a reason why I'm also doing that, and I'm going to be talking to you guys about this a little bit today, and that is literally that I was uninspired by this kit. And it has absolutely nothing to do with Simon Says Stamp or the design or anything like that. It has more so to do with me as a crafter. As a crafter, I'm someone who takes a lot of inspiration from the world around me. Now, New York City has had basically a very mild winter, and it feels like a very early spring over here, so my brain has checked out into spring mode. I want the florals and the lemons and the farmer's market, and that's where I'm ready to go with my craft making. So when I got this, I was kind of bummed out and I was having a hard time figuring out what I wanted to do with it. In situations like this, I just kind of find that it's really nice to kind of find inspiration online, and for me that inspiration came in the form of Yana Smakula's blog post for Simon Says Stamp. I find that when I see something like that, the one thing I really want to do is take their ideas, make them my own, and then kind of use their designs as a guided practice towards all of the designs that I'm going to do later on. So that's where I got my inspiration from. I'm going to be using the paper pack because it was the one thing that really jumped out at me, and I really liked the color story that was coming from it, and I wanted to share that with you guys because I'm sure that we've all been there and done that. For my first card, I took a tag that came in this kit and I just cut off the top part of it, and then I used a hole puncher to punch a hole at the top. I'm going to use the string to make a bow, and after I was done making a bow, I wanted to take some of these pom-poms just so I can adhere some of them to the ends of these strings. I wasn't sure how Yana did this, but I figured maybe using, the actual glossy accents that might help. Honestly, in retrospect, definitely just go with multimedia matte glue. It holds a little bit better, or just make a garland because they might fall apart in the mail. I'm a little bit scared about it, but for now they seem to be okay. So I'm just reporting, guys. Anyway, once I was done adhering all of my pom-poms, I took this strip of lipstick red cardstock and I cut a little strip from it, and then I made a fishtail at the bottom of my tag just because I saw that Yana did this a lot in her designs and I thought it was really neat and crafty. I also performed some stamp surgery at the at the bottom of my actual stamp set, just because I really do like stamps that are a little bit more linear and not as bulky, so I was really happy to see that Yana did this. I heat embossed the sentiment "Wanna Build a Snowman" with some Ranger Princess Gold embossing powder, and then I raised it up on some foam squares. Next, I'm going to take this awesome little polar bear that was in the paper pack and I'm just going to cut around him to kind of have a little character, and then I'm going to raise him up on foam squares as well. Once I was done doing that, I really wanted to get kind of a nice little thing going with the papers, and this is where it kind of pays to have a ton of strips that coordinate together because you'll never go wrong. I took some strips that I made from the surf blue cardstock and the lipstick red cardstock, as well as the night cardstock, and I adhered them directly on to the strips that I had done before. And once I was done adhering all of those elements down, that finished off my first card. For my next card, I really wanted to use that cute little tag that we got during last year's kit for December. I hadn't used it yet and I figured it coordinates beautifully with this kit, so why not? Also, kudos to Simon Says Stamp for using patriotic colors in the winter. I did not see this coming. It was a really nice twist. Anyway, once I adhere this down to my tag, I realized I didn't like it in a landscape position, so I definitely go ahead and I switch it to a portrait sort of position and cut off the excess. I'm also going to take this little ribbon from Hero Arts that just, you know, came randomly, and I'm just going to create a little, you know, a little ribbon situation at the top of my tag. Once I was done with all of this, I took the heart stamp and I decided to go ahead and use some Hero Arts Puffy white embossing powder just to heat emboss those hearts. And then I made a little garland using the string that came in this kit and those white puff balls basically. I'm going to take one of those strips that I had already cut out and I'm going to make a fishtail. And after I was done doing that, I kind of wanted to give a really weird balance to this, so I took some night cardstock and I just adhered it to the center of the strip using my tape runner. Once I was done cutting off the excess, I go ahead and I raise up my little tag onto this panel with some foam squares, and then I'm going to use a combination of my tape runner and some foam squares to raise up the "Baby, It's Cold Outside." Once I was done doing this, I really wanted to find a really good panel to adhere this little strip onto, and after kind of, you know, finagling through a couple of different options, I settle on this awesome paper that has the trees on it. So once I kind of decide what I wanted to do and where I wanted to place it, I go ahead and adhere that down directly onto my panel using my tape runner. Once this is adhered down, I'm also going to go ahead and I'm going to take a strip of surf blue cardstock and I'm going to heat emboss the sentiment "Want to Build a Snowman" with the same Princess Gold embossing powder that I had used for my first card, just for consistency's purposes, and I just really wanted there to be a little bit of a pop of shimmer somewhere on this card without bringing any other embellishments. I go ahead and I adhere this down to my card panel using my tape runner, and I cut off any of the excess that was lingering over, and I'm really happy I chose this tree because it just goes perfectly with that surf blue cardstock. I go ahead and I adhere that down to my card base, and that finished off this card. For my next card, I had a little bit of trouble because this was around the time that I kind of stopped relying on Yana's designs, and I kind of wanted to do something of my own to get my own wheels turning and see if I can kind of, you know, imitate her design aesthetic. So I had this random piece of ultra matte black cardstock lying around, and it reminded me of the black tags that came in this kit, so I decided to use it. I adhered it to one of the strips I had already cut from the paper pack, and then I put a little strip on top of that. This card is super simple and it might make anybody with OCD cringe a little bit because of how I cut that strip with the lines on it, and I'm sorry about that, but if you're doing this, you can always just use another strip. Once I was done raising up my sentiment on some foam squares and using my tape runner to adhere my card down to some lipstick red cardstock, that finished off this card. For my next card, I want it to be a little bit adventurous. So another thing that I find myself doing when I don't have a lot of inspiration is taking a little bit of risk when it comes to like the things that I can do with paper or my embellishments. That's kind of how the mosaic thing came about. I saw it on Instagram and I wanted to see if I can recreate it, so I went ahead and did that. For this, I actually wanted to recreate something that I had learned in my second card making workshop class at Paper Source. This was a thing that we ended up doing for a Thanksgiving card. We took different strips of paper and we ended up weaving them together. So here I'm taking some night cardstock, some lipstick red cardstock, and some surf blue cardstock to just kind of form a little bit of a weaving pattern. And all I'm going to do is between these cards, I'm gonna have one strip that goes under, then over, then under and over, and then the next one is gonna obviously do the opposite of that, which, you know, it's just over, then under, over, then under. And I'm just going to do this several times. Obviously, if you wanted a full panel like this, you would do it for the entire card. I only wanted a corner. I think that I can probably do a little bit more to experiment with this. I just kind of wanted to see if it would kind of coordinate a little bit with this card kit, so that's why I'm bringing it out. Definitely not something you have to do, or it's just kind of fun to look at and just a different way to think about paper. So that's what I ended up doing. I go ahead and I use my tape runner just to secure some of this paper down to the ending strips. And once I was done doing that, I run my tape runner all over the strips of paper and then I adhere them down to my card base directly. I'm going to cut off any of the excess so that way we have a straightforward card panel, and as you can see, it does create a really awesome technique. It might look better with just like white on white, but it was pretty cool here. I go ahead and I make a fishtail on this sentiment, although I don't actually end up using. What I do end up doing here is making a little garland with those pom-poms because I do want to make like a background little pom-pom wreath for my actual sentiment. For this card, or for this sentiment, I'm going to use the Snow Much sentiment from the stamp set. And I'm going to heat emboss that with some Red Ranger embossing powder, and I kind of wish that I would have just used some white embossing powder or my Princess Gold just to make this pop a little bit more, but I just wanted to kind of go along with that red theme. I embossed Thanks on some surf blue cardstock and I raise it up with some foam squares. I then go ahead and make a little wreath behind the sentiment, and after I was done with adhering that down, I go ahead and I use some foam squares to raise this up. Lastly, I'm just going to take some of those X's that came in this kit and some Unicorn Hero Arts ink to create a little bit of interest on this panel, and that finished off this card. For my last card, actually this isn't my last card, I thought this was, I'm sorry about that guys. For this card, I'm going to do the same thing that I did the first time just because I thought that I was kind of moving away from Yana's style and I kind of wanted to like remember it in my head, so I kind of wanted to do another card that was reminiscent of that. So I did the same thing that I did the first time, cut off the tag and, you know, just hole punch the top and of course make a little bow with it. It took me a little while to kind of realize what paper I wanted to use, but this is my favorite paper of the whole pack, so I figured I would use it for a card. So I go ahead and I make a fishtail, and after I was done doing that, I go ahead and I kind of wanted to secure this a little bit more than I did the first one, so I wanted to use my tape runner to just make sure that at least the top was adhered to that middle layer. I'm also going to go ahead and I'm going to heat emboss the sentiment "Wanna Build a Snowman" to this strip, although it doesn't necessarily match. The hot chocolate is like a hug from the inside, just because it just didn't match, but I couldn't see anything else that would fit there other than "Thanks for my gift," and I kind of didn't really want to put that in a card, so this is kind of what I went with. It's totally fine. I'm having fun experimenting with this card kit. You know, it did turn out to be a really awesome learning experience. Once I was done doing that, I adhered one of the strips that I had cut out to my panel, and then I'm going to take some of this lipstick red strips that I had already pre-cut out, and I'm just going to kind of make a border for that other strip, so that way I can kind of have a little bit of a difference in between my tag and my actual panel. Once I was done with that, I pulled out my multimedia matte glue to adhere some of these pom-poms down, and honestly this works a lot better to adhere them down. I definitely don't recommend having such long strips or such long string. I would have cut this down a lot more because when you start moving it, it tends to get a little bit tangled, so that's just something to look out for. I go ahead and I adhere this down to actually a card base that I just had from my last pack or from my last kit, and once I was done adhering that down, that finished off this card. For my last card, I wanted to create one of my own like paper panels, the same as the Echo Park inspiration, so I go ahead and I start designing that by stamping down Snow Much to my lipstick red cardstock, and then I start taking these X's and my Simon Says Stamp embossing ink. After I was done doing that, I took my Ranger Emboss It pen and I'm just going to make a line to kind of divide the thanks at the top. Now, I'm going to actually put another piece of paper over the thanks. This is just acting kind of as a place marker. And after I was done doing that, I'm going to take some of those snowflakes that also came in the stamp set to kind of, you know, decorate it a little bit more. I'm going to heat emboss this with some white Paper Source embossing powder, and once I was done doing that, I actually heat embossed thanks on some Night cardstock from Paper Source with some Princess Gold Ranger embossing powder, and then I made little coordinating fish strips or fish tail strips at the ends of that, and that gave me the perfect little card sentiment that kind of matched the exact same aesthetic of the Echo Park paper. So once I was done doing that, I'm going to take this other piece of ultra matte black cardstock that I had on my desk, and I'm just going to start adhering different sheets of paper to it. This was definitely my last card. I was very tired and I was really running on empty with any inspiration that I was getting. Nothing was really coming to me, even though I was really trying. So I just decided to go all out with my strips. I really had nothing to lose. So I just go ahead and adhere different shapes and sizes to my ultra matte black cardstock. And after I was done doing all of that, I actually adhere all of that onto the panel that's beige. And once I was done adhering everything, I'm going to adhere this panel down to a white card base. Once I was doing that, once I was done doing that, I realized that I still had this little sentiment that I had cut out from the little polar bear, and I thought it was perfect to add in addition to this. Well guys, thank you guys so much for chatting with me and listening to me and coming to this video to see my cards and get some inspiration. I hope that this helped in some way, and I hope to see you guys again soon. Take care.